we now have a much a kind of evolved scope of how we're thinking about creating better places for people to live, and really thinking about how do we create regenerative neighborhoods that are truly, creating more energy, more kind of thriving lives for folks that are more equitable, that are more affordable, that are helping address issues of climate resilience.
Welcome to Home Green Homes Podcast. I am Izumi Tanaka, a green home advisor and a green realtor. Here I invite a variety of experts in the world of green homes and have conversations about how we can all live in healthy, resilient, and efficient homes. My guests provide insight in a wide range of topics, from designing, building, and living in green homes, purchasing or financing green homes and improvements, to how we can live to reduce the negative environmental impact from the way we live. My goal is to inspire and inform you about how we can make a difference in our own lives and our environment. Hello, this is Izumi Tanaka with Home Green Homes Podcast. Today I have Hannah Bruegmann from Build It Green, and her title is Director of Initiatives. Thank you, Hannah, for coming to talk to me today. And I really appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about Build It Green. So Hannah, why don't you first tell me about who you are and what you do at Build It Green?
Hey, Izumi, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks so much for having us on today. Like you said, I'm the Director of Initiatives at Build It Green. And so that means I help design, manage, and run the programs that we have at Build It Green, and Greenpoint Rated, which we're going to talk about today, is kind of one of those programs. I've been with the organization for a little over a year and a half. And in that time, we've done a whole lot of things, which I can either get into now or we can talk more about later. So just let me know.
Great, thank you so much. So first of all, let's hear a little bit about Build It Green itself. What was the genesis of Build It Green, and what was the vision?
Yeah, so I wasn't around then, but here's the story that I know. So we were started around 2005 when the Green Resource Center in the city of Berkeley merged with the organization called Bay Area Build It Green. And essentially, they were creating a hub for residential green building in the Bay Area, and a place for passionate green building professionals to come together. So at that time, there wasn't a lot of kind of structure, support, or places that people could go when they wanted to learn more or talk with other kind of like-minded folks who were trying to really make green building better. So through this kind of coming together of these different organizations, a few different councils sort of emerged, and Build It Green was helpful in convening those different groups. So each of them was sort of around a different topic or kind of area of practice that folks really wanted to get into. So for example, the Public Agency Council, the Green Affordable Housing Coalition, the Green Remodelers Guild, or the Raiders Council. So people who were interested in kind of talking with each other about how they were handling different aspects of green building, affordable housing, remodeling. Mm-hmm. These different things. There was a lot of cross-pollination between these different groups, and they really helped create kind of a sense of camaraderie and community around these kinds of emerging practices and ways of thinking around building and energy efficiency and making our homes healthier and indoor air quality and all of these things that we knew were kind of important, but just needed a little help and sense of community to put into practice. So all of these guilds worked together to help create kind of the initial Greenpoint Rated pilots, which we'll talk about that program a little bit more. And even, fun fact, so Passive House California, Passive House is now, I think, a pretty well-known certification. Passive House California, the kind of local one, kind of emerged out of some of these early efforts related to Build It Green. So that's kind of where we started. And then from there, we grew and we did a number of other things as an organization. So we kind of formalized Greenpoint Rated as a program a few years after getting started. So and that really came through an organization called Stop Waste, which is the Alameda County Waste Authority, which is up here in the Bay Area. And they, so BIG was really formally founded to say, hey, let's help run this Greenpoint Rated program. We think it's an asset that the community could really use. And it's been operating in California ever since. And then as of 2018, we've been doing a nationwide pilot, and we're recognized by Fannie Mae's Green Certification Program. And all of the kind of councils and guild work helped build up to these things. And in addition, so energy efficiency hadn't really been a big part of the kind of building codes before this, or something that people were really thinking about and aware of it, except in kind of, small communities. So Cal Green, the California Green Reach Code, went into effect in 2011, and the efforts of folks involved with Greenpoint Rated and Build It Green were pretty pivotal in helping bring those to bear. So that's kind of early days. And then we continue to run Greenpoint Rated, but just as an organization, need to keep operating. And so we ended up doing a lot of work with the utilities to help implement both education for them, as well as sort of weatherization or energy efficiency programs, until about 2019, when our board, which was a pretty visionary move, said, there's other people who are doing kind of these energy efficiency and weatherization projects. We think that Build It Green maybe has the potential to help push the building industry, and particularly the housing industry, forward, similar to how we did kind of at our original genesis, to say, okay, green building is more mainstream. It's not fully mainstream, but like the California code in base code has come pretty far. A lot more people are aware of these things and issues. Energy efficiency is like a pretty well-known thing. What's next? What can we do to help actually advance and push the building culture even farther in the direction of creating vitality for humans and for the ecology, for the places that we live. We know so much more than we did, 15, 17, 18 years ago about, the impacts of natural gas emissions inside our homes on human health and effects of different materials. We've got, we know just a lot more about kind of chemicals and how all of these things interact, not just within the home environment, but also like how important where you live more broadly really impacts your health, and how the health of the environment impacts humans and vice versa. So we really saw the need to go just outside, not only within the housing envelope, but outside the housing envelope too, which as a real estate agent, how important the places where we are live and really impact our entire quality of life. So we now have a much a kind of evolved scope of how we're thinking about creating better places for people to live, and really thinking about how do we create regenerative neighborhoods that are truly, creating more energy, more kind of thriving lives for folks, that are more equitable, that are more affordable, that are helping address issues of climate resilience. So that's kind of the trajectory that Build It Green has been on, and where we are today.
Well, thank you so much. That's really fascinating. And I'm just really fascinated that this, it seems like in that East Bay area where you are, it's like a vortex of this whole concepts and green building and professionals gathering. And I love hearing about that. So Build It Green is a California organization, and but I understand that it's starting to spread across the country. Is that correct? So yeah, tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we're still deeply rooted in California, both Bay Area and LA regions in particular, but really trying to address the needs of improving housing and neighborhoods across the state.
Mm-hmm.
But we also saw potential for Greenpoint Rated to support green buildings and advancing efforts in other places, which is why we started our nationwide pilot a few years ago to see basically with kind of the same premise that we had in California,
Mm-hmm.
a decade or so ago, which is like, we want to create something that is just really accessible for people to understand what are things that I can do that feel approachable and tangible, but that also materially do improve the place that I'm living.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were designing Greenpoint Rated, as we think about Greenpoint Rated, we're really trying to make it as accessible as possible to folks while keeping it super credible. It is very much based in building science.
Mm-hmm.
But how can we just continue to improve the baseline for folks? And like I said, California has a pretty advanced building code relative to a lot of other states in the US in terms of how it thinks about energy efficiency and materials reuse and all of those kinds of things. But other folks or other states aren't like that. So we wanted to explore if there would be kind of value to helping do this kind of process in other places.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So Greenpoint Rated System is one of the programs that Build It Green created. And I would love to hear more about other programs that you're doing. I love looking through your website where you have all this robust information about different things that Build It Green is doing. But I think I'd like to hear a little bit more about the Greenpoint Rated System, because that's something that I can use as a real estate agent. And so as you probably know, obviously, there are many other rating systems nowadays for green build practices. Yeah. And, LEED is probably most known and established, probably one of the oldest. How do you differentiate from some other certification programs such as LEED, and there's other certification program called Pearl certification out of East Coast, and now we have living building challenges and living community challenges. That and there's a lot of great movements happening, and so I would like to know how Greenpoint Rated System may differentiate from the others. What's the unique point?
Well, I think it's lovely that there's a robust ecosystem of different pathways that people can choose to try and, improve the quality of their homes and the places where they live. So one, I don't think it's a competition. I think it's a diversity in the ecosystem, which is really lovely. Living building challenge that really is helping people see like what is really possible if we're really pushing, super far. There's, passive house. How can we be thinking about, with a real focus on the envelope, and or LEED, which is kind of seen as the one that people are most familiar with. So I think Greenpoint Rated, we've always tried to think about it as a program. I've said this already, but it's really accessible. It's really about helping people kind of simply understand just what are some of the simple and straightforward things. Not that it's simple to get all of the measures, you have to do documentation and testing and all of that. It's robust from a quality perspective, but trying to just make green building approachable and not have it be this thing that's just for, folks who are super crunchy or, making a ton of sacrifices, which I don't think green building is at all. I think it's actually a huge improvement to the quality of life. And I think I'm really excited about a lot of the kind of emerging science and popular opinion that's coming out, about like electrification and heat pumps and things that not only help make our homes more efficient, but they also make them more comfortable. So I think that's really lovely. And I think it's an important part of the story when we're talking about these different things. So I think that's really what Greenpoint Rated apart. The other thing is it's kind of unique just in that we have been so California based for so long, and we have a close relationship with the California building code. So it just makes it a little bit simpler, at least for builders and remodelers in California, because it tracks so nicely with the California code.
I see. So can you tell me some of the...
Sorry, one last thing.
Sure.
We also focus only on housing, which,
Right.
like LEED has a bunch of different things. And one of the reasons that we kind of emerged early on was LEED for housing was just pretty expensive and complicated. That's why the approachable piece was so important to us, because it's like housing there's a lot of buildings that constitute housing. It's a pretty important sector of the built environment. So, it really deserves to have support.
Yeah, I agree with you. LEED is fairly established, but I think in the more institutional or commercial buildings and such have more traction in getting LEED certification. But in the residential area, I think it's number one, it's expensive to get it certified on a single home basis. So I agree with you that it's important to be able, to be accessible for any single family home, or even smaller residential buildings to have access to a system like that. So thank you so much for adding that. So can you tell me some of the criteria of the Green Point rated system? I'm sure energy efficiency is one of them, but how do you rate, or how do you certify homes?
Yeah. So energy efficiency is sort of the big kahuna part of it. You can get the most points here in energy efficiency, and that has a lot to do with when the Green Point rated system was developed. That was kind of the cutting edge. We, for those who follow this kind of thing, the building code gets updated in California every 3 years. And so we update our manual on the same, well, sometimes more often, but we definitely make sure that the program is tracking to exceed California building code. So we're in the process of updating it right now and starting to take into account even kind of more things that don't show up a ton in here, but are starting to be pretty important around building decarbonization and electrification. So, but energy efficiency is a really big element. And then there's 4 others, so 5 total. Resource conservation. So this has to do with, soils and recycling and those recycling materials on site. Indoor air quality is a pretty important one. Water conservation. And then the last one is, I think, important to call out. There's not a ton of points for it now, although it's something that I think more and more attention is getting put on as we kind of learn more about the importance of community, but it is that community element and well-being of the community. And so that's everything from, is it kind of mixed use? Is it sort of walkable? Do you have like an interface with a street so people can kind of engage in social life, which we learn more and more is so critical to our well-being and our sense of place and connection to community, and combating a lot of the things that I think especially COVID has made so clear, a really important part of thriving, addressing loneliness and feelings of disconnection.
I am so glad to hear that part, because and I'm also very much interested in hearing more about how you rate that element of community, because as you said, that community is I really think that community is what supports us in the daily life, right? So if I were to be rating a single family home, how do you rate the community elements? Like, do you look at the walkability, like as you mentioned, or is there any points that one can get for community aspect?
Yeah, so that's a good point. I didn't say that earlier. There's actually 4 pathways in the Green Point rated system. So we have both a new homes pathway and an existing homes pathway. So for things like retrofits or updates, both for multifamily and for single family. So we've got 4 total pathways. And we definitely see a lot more multi-family projects. A ton of projects that we see are actually even officially affordable housing. So fewer single family homes, just by volume, which, makes sense. One multifamily project, 100 units, that's kind of a lot there. But a lot of it, you can earn points in categories like pedestrian and bicycle access, has to do with like walkability and access to transit. Social equity measures are included, including like the diversity of the workforce working on the project. Things like resiliency. So thinking about how do you, this is more and more becoming both climatic and social, right? If you think about climate resiliency, for example, in the Bay Area, if you live in the inner Bay Area, so Oakland, Berkeley, if you're familiar, San Francisco, like almost nobody has air conditioning. That hasn't been something that you've needed. But as our climate continues to change, we've started getting heat waves and incidents where, especially for young people or older people, more vulnerable to heat, we have to start thinking about, okay, how can our buildings and especially our homes be resilient as these climatic changes happen? So thinking about, okay, how can these homes be designed to better weather those kinds of things?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's really inspiring to hear. So do you have any statistics or data of how many homes have been rated so far?
Oh, lifetime? You didn't even give me this one ahead of time. I don't have that number off the top of my head.
I know, I just thought of that question.
I can tell you that in 2021, so last year, we certified over 9,000 homes.
Oh, wow.
So that was a lot of homes, mostly in California, but some outside Florida, and a couple other places in the US. Net overall, I'd have to go look it up.
It's okay. I'm sorry. I should have asked you that before. But 9,000 in California is really, really actually surprising for me to hear.
Yeah.
Do you know if there were any concentration of the area? Is it mostly Northern California around Bay Area, or is it more spread all over the state?
They're actually pretty well dispersed. We do have a lot in the Bay Area. There's, pretty high demand for housing up here, and
Sure.
affordable housing developers are really doing their best, but a lot in the LA region. And throughout the Central Valley, we actually have, if you go to our website, we profile some of the projects that we've done, and you can see where they show up throughout the state. So it's pretty diverse, actually. But it does, this kind of makes sense. We have more projects where more people live.
Sure. So is it the homeowners who are opting to get their homes rated, or is it the builders or real estate agents, and who are the ones that are driving the rating?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And it really depends. So on like the multifamily projects, it's the developers, a lot of affordable housing developers do it both because there's requirements through the financing that they need to get in order to do the builds. For other developers, it's just trying to show the additional value. If you either rent or purchase the homes that they're developing, they'll have lower operating costs. Like I said, they'll be more comfortable. They're more likely to be healthier for you to live in. You don't have to worry about things like asthma or some of the other issues that we know are such a problem with indoor air quality. But for the single family projects, it is usually the homeowners that are self-motivating. So there's a gentleman in my neighborhood who has his home Greenpoint rated platinum. And I would say he was probably like one of the early adopter Greenpoint rated folks. He's an architect. He's really excited about it. So he's gone and done that for his home because he wanted to just evidence all of the great work that he put into making it a beautiful place to live.
That's amazing. So do you also track any data about whether green home rated properties are valued higher?
Oh my goodness, Izumi. I wish that we did. I wish that we did better. We're really just involved in the rating of
Mm-hmm.
those
Mm-hmm.
buildings. And like I said, we do a lot of multifamily, so they're often managed by, affordable housing developers. So you don't get that same data,
Mm-hmm.
but there is data, not just for Greenpoint rated specific homes, but that do show that greener homes, whether they're rated by other programs or they're evidenced through home energy resource scores, things like that, can command as much as 10% additional value on the market, just because people want to live in places that are going to be better for them,
Yes.
and whether some people, I think, actively seek it out and they really know and understand, and others just it's kind of an intuitive
Right. Right.
sense that's important.
And I'm sorry that I asked you that hard question, because I myself am trying to gather data to prove that any homes that have green features or green elements would command higher values or
Yeah.
higher price. And it's a somewhat elusive process right now, because not a lot of the rating system are consistent, or not all the homes that have green elements get rated or certified. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to grasp all the actual data, and
Yeah.
so I think a lot of us who are in this field are trying to figure out, somehow to gather all the information so we can actually have some hard data to,
Yeah.
present to the world. Um,
Totally. I think there's people who understand the value without needing that proof, but I think for others, it can be helpful to influence their choices around what they want to spend money on. They value their health or the health of their children or their parents or the environment around them. So
yeah, exactly. So I appreciate the information about Greenpoint rated system, but you also have some interesting programs at Build It Green. Number one, certified green building professional. Is that correct? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So kind of going back to the earliest days of Build It Green, sort of training and learning and helping folks kind of share resources and better understand green building practices and approaches have been a really core part of the work that we do. So Certified Green Building Professionals, or CGBP, is a training course that we offer that over the course of 16 hours, so it's a lot of content, gives you an overview of a lot of the core elements and things to think about when you're designing a building that's going to be more sustainable for human and environmental health. And so that's everything from materials choices, what are kind of chemicals to be aware of or avoid, or things to look at, what are resources that you can use for looking at materials, how do you measure indoor air quality or even air pressure inside a home and why that matters, and like the design of an HVAC system that's going to make your home really comfortable and also more likely to be able to manage air pollutants in an effective way. So it runs through all of those elements and gives people a really strong foundation in kind of basic green building science. So we run those kind of on an as needed basis. Obviously with COVID, they've been all online. We used to be able to do them in person and do site visits, and that's pretty fun. It would be great to get back to offering them in that way. But that's a course that we've been offering for a long time, and is a great way for people to kind of access the basics of green building principles.
And who are the people who go through that program?
We get a whole diversity of folks. We just did a session in partnership with Richmond Neighborhood Housing Services, and they have a really super cool program to help create the next generation of emerging Black developers. and other people of color, so who have not traditionally had access to that kind of work. So we just had a bunch of emerging developers come through. So people who are thinking about building and building design. We have folks who want to get rated as a Greenpoint rater, and that's a great foundation for them to understand the principles. We have, there's a woman who's taken it and gone through our rating program who works as the sustainability design director at an affordable housing company. So anybody who's involved in the design and building of buildings, who might not have had kind of a super extensive building science or design background.
Mm-hmm. So they're not necessarily only limited to architects or contractors.
No, absolutely not. Again, kind of coming back to like, let's make this information really accessible to people. That's really the idea behind CGBP is Certified Green Building Professionals, is like, this is a great way to get a really solid understanding of kind of the basics and dynamics of building a home.
Mm-hmm. And does that apply to other areas outside of California? Can people from outside of the area can go through this program and still benefit?
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially since it's been online, we've had folks from across the US take the course, because it's, air pressure, the laws of physics don't change when you go over the border to Nevada. So it's all pretty broadly applicable. It doesn't, we don't go into building code in great depth, because obviously that does really change, not only from state to state, but even, within the state, obviously different jurisdictions have different additional rules. So.
I see. Yes. And how about the other program that you have, the Greenpoint rater? What's the program like for someone who wants to be a rater?
Yeah,
who might be interested.
Yeah, so the way that Greenpoint rated works as a certification program is you work with a Greenpoint rater, so a person who has gone through a whole series of trainings with us. So we have a core training, and then if you want to certify existing multifamily buildings, for example, we have a specific training for that, because obviously the conditions in a single family home are different than multifamily home, are different than a new home, different than an existing home, right? Just the conditions that you're going to encounter are totally different. So raters are folks who've actually gone through, they've done a core training, so they understand much more in depth what are all of the aspects of the certification. So we have a lot of different measures, and each one is worth different points, and there's different aspects of each of those different points. So they really understand them in depth. So if you want to have your structure Greenpoint rated, you work with a rater who's had this training. So we do run this education and training series for anyone who wants to be a rater. And then they also, as part of that, we have a manual with all the measures, and then we have a checklist, which is super helpful. It's very easy to use, kind of guides you down. Here's all the different things, and what are the kind of points you can get for each one, and how do you, we provide a lot of additional resources, like how do you work with clients to help them understand what these things mean, and verify them, and choose different pathways based on kind of what's possible in your unique site. And so the rater community then is able to rate projects, and we run kind of an annual quality control just randomly against some projects to make sure that they are really kind of evidencing everything that they said they were, the way they said, and we have them do ongoing education. So there's really a whole community of folks, and some folks have been doing rating with us for a long time. But we consider all of those kind of within the Greenpoint rated. So Greenpoint raters, Greenpoint rating, it's all kind of one of the same program. And our other programs are all really emerging right now. And like I said at the beginning, it's really thinking about, okay, one of the things that made Build It Green so powerful when we first started is we were a place to convene people who had a lot of different perspectives, but we're all kind of working on the same issue. And that's the way housing still is. Like, your perspective as a real estate agent is pretty different than somebody who's a builder, who's pretty different than, somebody who's a policymaker, either at your local city council or even at the state level, who's thinking about, making rules about ADUs, is totally different than somebody who's, an advocate for renters. So now we're thinking about, okay, we did this kind of with green building. How do we think about convening this broad group of folks to really address these pretty core crises we have between climate crisis and the housing affordability crisis, to see, okay, what can we do to really make these neighborhoods regenerative? So that's where actually the bulk of the energy that we're spending right now as an organization is thinking about how do we help advance these things even farther.
And we still have a lot of work to do. And I'm so grateful that you are doing so much work, and this is very encouraging and inspiring what you are doing. You mentioned in the beginning, like, this is a place for the passionate, people to gather, to exchange information, to inspire each other. And I see that that's happening in many other places, but I'm really grateful to know about you guys. And I have more questions, but I'm running out of time. So I would like you to tell us, like, what if a homeowner or somebody who may be, possibly a developer or builder is currently considering of remodeling or building, what's the easiest, simplest resource that people can find from Build It Green? And if you can point them out to where they can find that information.
Yeah, so if you go to our website, builditgreen.org, you will, sorry, just a second. Let me give the exact one. builditgreen.org. Then there's a whole section on Greenpoint Rated under our programs. And there we offer a lot of information about just high level, the program information packages, and even a quick calculator on the cost of doing our program, which is much more affordable than some of the other things that are out there. You can quickly find raters in your area. You can read about other projects. So that's a great resource for folks. And then I'll just plug a resource that isn't Build It Green, but for anybody who's thinking about, especially kind of remodeling their homes. If you're a real estate agent and you're working a lot with folks who are looking at their single family homes and sales and purchasing, it's really great to know about the website Switch is On. So switch like light switch, Switch is On if you're in California. And they're a fabulous resource for all of the incentives that are available for things like hot water heat pumps or other energy efficient and water efficient devices that you can get at reduced costs. So if you're thinking about improving your home to make it better, whether you get a Greenpoint rated or not, obviously we'd love that. But that's a great, really one-stop shop for folks to go and see, like, what support can I get for doing these conversions to make my home a little bit better.
Yeah, I have been to Switches On too, and it's pretty amazing all the information you can get. So thank you so much for all that information. I can talk to you for hours.
Likewise, Izumi, this is great.
Thank you so much, Hannah. And this was Home Green Homes with Izumi Tanaka, and this was Hannah Bruegmann from Build It Green. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Izumi.